You know that feeling you get when you need to have a tough conversation with a parent, deliver critical feedback to a staff member, or unite a divided team? That knot in your stomach that says, I'm a great educator, but am I communicating this the right way? I've been there. Year after year, I'd write the same goal in different words. Connection, crucial conversations, conflict resolution, how to deal with difficult people. I'm Crystal Atkinson, and after more than 20 years teaching and leading in public education, I've cracked the code on the communication skills that matter most, and I'm sharing them all with you. Whether you're dealing with resistant staff, anxious parents, or complex community dynamics, this podcast will give you the strategies and confidence to handle it all. Together, we'll explore how to connect with people who challenge you most, inspire your team to do their best work, and navigate conflict without losing sleep. Because here's what I've learned. Leadership isn't just about vision and strategy. It's about the conversations that happen every single day. And those conversations, they can be taught, practiced, and mastered. Welcome to Vibrant Leadership for Educational Leaders. Let's transform the way you communicate. Welcome back, Vibrant Leader. Today's episode is one that probably gets the worst rap in all of education. We are going through the Vibrant framework of what it means to be a vibrant leader. Last week, we talked about vision, and we're going to move through all of the letters in Vibrant, all the way to T, which is your transformation. Today is I, insights. Like I say, anything to do with insights, data, anything like that generally gets a bad rap. But let's just start with this. I love teaching. I love the energy of schools. I love the laughter, the productive struggle, the celebrations. I love it all. My first few years of teaching were led primarily through activities that I felt most kids enjoyed and were successful at. No real data other than, my classroom tests that I would look at. And often those were led simply by figuring out, these percentage points, these are the students who didn't pass. And not really a whole lot of, deep dive. Certainly no conversations with my colleagues around data. But then something changed. Actually, two things changed. First, I was given a grade 9 English class. And here in Alberta, we write government exams in grade 9. And at the same time, our school received a new principal. Now, to start off the year, the principal came in and he really epitomized what it means to be a vibrant leader. But he started off the year with printed off data of grades 3, 6, 9, and 12 government test results. At the time in Alberta, grade 3s wrote government exams. They don't anymore. That has shifted, but regardless, he broke us up into groups of teachers where we worked through a list of questions that helped us reflect what went well and what areas of the test our students struggled with. And then he helped us identify themes and specific content areas that we could then use to inform how we were teaching, how we were planning, with the goal of better meeting the needs of our students, right? Isn't that the collective goal to begin with? But that process really helped us reframe what we thought about data. Now, in regards to my grade 9 English class, it went mostly great. It really did. But my class did terribly on one particular reading piece in their reading comprehension, and that was the theater script. Let me tell you, my friend, I was shocked. As a theater major, I thought the ability to read a script was easy and, common sense. So I spent very little time explicitly teaching my students the elements of a script and how to read it. Now, because our principal had set up a culture of reflection all year long, this wasn't just a one and done, the data jumped off the page to me, and I felt terrible because it doesn't matter how many people say, it's not personal. It is personal. Teaching is very personal. But I was grateful to know what I could do to help my next group of grade 9s with their test the following year. So that culture of knowing what insights to look at was really, really helpful. At the same time, I had grade sixes. In my grade six math class, what I learned by looking at the themes and not being allowed to focus on, oh, it's their fault, it's a terrible test, terrible this. What we did was I would be able to say, okay, question 17, 70% of my class did wrong. In previous years, I would have said it was a poorly written test or question, wasn't my fault. There's nothing I could do. Look at the whole province did bad. What I was able to do is say, why? What about that question stumped my students? And in my math class with my grade sixes, what I discovered was a one-step problem. For the most part, my students performed really well. Two-step problems, a large chunk of my students fell off. And then three-step problems, very few, if any, could solve. So I knew as a teacher, okay, what I need to do, first step, increase the level of complexity of problems my students are solving. So I had really clear data as to what I could do, what was in my locus of control to help my students perform better. So what was I doing here? I was experiencing firsthand the challenge that Hattie writes about in his Visible Learning books. In his sequel book in 2023, part of his writing is how do we move beyond claiming what works to what works best. So at the classroom level, this made sense because I've always wanted my students to be as successful as possible. In fact, I never wanted to be an administrator because I thought administrators were all about the numbers. And for me, leadership was all about the people. Educational leaders would make goals like, we will improve the literacy rate in our school by 4% by the end of this school year. And quite honestly, as a teacher, I was like, I don't even know what that means. It meant nothing to me. It was not inspiring. It didn't help move my practice forward. It really was just kind of a nothing. It was a compliance document. And so in my mind, I thought, well, politicians and those at arm's lengths from schools like to focus on numbers, division office people, which I am one now, and others out there. As an educator, as a classroom teacher, I knew that starting with the human meant I needed to give meaning and I needed to infuse life into my vision. I needed to be more than numbers. I'm also a mom. What's the first thing I ask my children when they come home? What data am I collecting from them? How was your day? Did you like your teacher? I didn't ask them, if you look at your last reading test and your current reading test, did you perform 4% better? No. How did you do? Did you feel good? Those social emotional needs as a mom and as a teacher, I knew were super, super, super important. I knew instinctively that as a mom, it wasn't about the specific curricular outcomes they were learning. It wasn't about what high yield pedagogical strategies the teachers were using. It wasn't about their school's ed plan. I wanted to know about my kid. And as a classroom teacher, I didn't want to get distracted by some, in my mind, trivial 4% goal that really meant nothing to me. So then fast forward from my early years as a mom, my early years as a classroom teacher, primarily grades 5 through 9, although I've taught everything pre-kindergarten through grade 12. When I became a vice principal, I began to wonder, how do I shift intentionally to include both the human being and the data? How do we make this moves? And so this series of questions are ones that I started to play with. And they're now here for you to use. I'll include them in the show notes so you don't have to pause this and write them down. Although, on an aside, if you haven't already, be sure to follow this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with your friends. Give me a review. That's how we can help other educators improve their leadership capacity, how they connect with their staff and move their practice forward. Okay, so what are the 4 questions? Here they are. First, you need to have clarity around who do you want to impact? Question number 1, who do you want to impact? Is it the struggling student? Is it the excited, spicy student? Is it the shy students or the eager ones who are there to learn? Who are you showing up for? Are you going to focus on a specific group of students in your classroom, or perhaps it's a content area? So if we go to that last classroom I was describing to you, or that last teaching assignment, I had a grade 5-6 split class and then a 7-8-9 split class. It was a small school, K to 12 at the time. I focused on my grade 6 math, my grade 9 English language arts. That was my focus. Did I plan for the rest? Of course. But those were the two content areas that I was focused on. But what is it for you? Is it that group of students? Is it a content area? There's no wrong answer. Question 1, who do you want to impact? Question 2, how will their lives change? We need to start there. Start asking questions. Why is this important? Is this going to give them confidence moving into tests? Is this going to give them the skills they need that are foundational to be successful in the years to come? How will this goal change their lives? How does it impact them? So important. If that emotion is not connected to our goals, we're likely going to forget about them and drop them. Number 2, how will their lives change? Number 3, what do you need to know to determine if you're on the right track? So what data do you need? What insights do you need? This is going to connect back to your vision. Your vision and your action plan is going to unite your staff together and move people forward. So you need to figure out, what data do I need? If you write government tests, is that going to help move your instruction forward? Is it going to give you the information you need, or do you need different information? There's, again, no wrong answer, but you need to know, what do you need to know to determine if you're on the right track? You need to know that. How do I know if students have learned, right? Last question, question number 4. What information do you need to help the students you're focused on? So what information do you need? So that can even be a collaborative. If you have a collaborative team meeting, if you have collaborative planning groups, in the school division I work with, we work with Jigsaw Learning. And so we have very structured groups of teachers who come and work together. That is a question you could bring to those groups. Perhaps you have a professional learning community or a response to intervention group, whatever your context looks like. I hope you have a structure in place. It's part of your communication plan. You need to ask, what information do you need to help the students you're focused on? Okay, vibrant leaders. Vibrant leaders, my friends, are anchored in the stories, strengths, and gaps of the students whom they serve. Let's really consider this. Vibrant leaders are anchored in the stories, strengths, and gaps of the students whom we serve. This is so important, my friend. Vibrant leaders are more than a set of data results. They're more than your annual education plan. They're anchored in the stories. How does that student feel? How is this going to impact their lives? What are they already good at that I don't need to spend a whole bunch of time with certain groups of students? What gaps do they have? And this is not about blame. This is about getting a really clear picture of where our students are at so that we can help move them forward. Let's consider an example outside of education. Have you ever tried to lose weight? Yes or no? If you haven't, you probably know somebody who has. Consider this. What's the very first thing you do when you're trying to lose weight? You're going to weigh yourself. You need to know that starting point. You need to know, where am I at? So that you can then create a target, a goal for where you want to end up. So we've got that starting point. We have our initial weight. Then what are we going to do? We're going to make a change. Perhaps it's diet. Maybe it's like, oh, okay, I need to have less deep fried food and more baked food. Let's try this for a period of time. And then what do? We weigh ourselves again. We need to check in, see where we at now compared to where we started. What's the difference? And then what do? We make more adjustments. Okay, that wasn't enough. Perhaps I need to have a few less flour-based foods and a few more protein-rich foods. I'm not a dietitian, but you get the drift. We're going to make more adjustments. And then what are we going to do? We're going to weigh in again. We're going to do another benchmark, another check-in. We need more data. Okay. So this isn't about lots of testing, but this is about we're going to learn a little, do a little, learn a little, do a little, learn a little, do a little, all the way along, so that when we check back in at our starting point, what we should see is progression. And if we aren't moving students forward, we need to ask ourselves why. What do students need to be successful? When you want to make something happen, we need to figure out where we're starting from and what we can do differently to move people forward, to make change. To be vibrant means to pulsate with life. Your data analysis should serve as a compass to guide how you're going to bring life into your results. That is the I. That is the insights behind what it means to be a vibrant leader. Try these. Take these 4 questions back to your collaborative planning groups or whatever structure you have in place. If you are solo, if you are in a super tiny school, you have nobody to talk about, maybe you're even a one teacher school. We have some of those in our division. Find a colleague, find a coach, find an administrator where you can say, hey, can we take an hour to sit down and talk about this data? Because when you bring your ideas together, you're going to come up with a lot of creative solutions. My friend, your work truly makes a difference in the world. Be sure to like, follow this episode, follow this podcast, share this with a friend. And when you go out into your schools, remember, you make a difference on the lives of your students. Go make today amazing, and we will see you again real soon on Vibrant Leadership for Educational Leaders.